Power doesn't come from shouting. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can throw a fit, slam doors, throw punches. That's noise. And noise fades. It doesn't come from revenge either. Revenge looks strong for a moment, but the more you explain it, the weaker it feels. You've already admitted they got to you. It doesn't even come from burning bridges. That's just theater. Fire makes a scene, but once the flames die, the ashes mean nothing. Real power is quieter. It's silence. It's walking away without a word. No speech, no explanation, no warning, just absence. Because absence cuts deeper than anger ever could. It leaves a gap. And the human mind cannot stand gaps. They fill it with questions, with stories, with endless replays of what they could have done differently. You don't give them an ending. You don't let them close the book. They keep turning pages that aren't there. That's the knife that cuts deepest. Not seen, not heard, but felt. Part 1. The mind's weakness. People don't crave love. Not really. Love is fragile. It can fade, change shape, vanish overnight. What they crave is certainty, the knowledge of where they stand, the comfort of knowing the story has an ending, that things make sense. Certainty is what lets people sleep at night. It's what calms the mind when the room is dark and quiet. It's the anchor that keeps thoughts from drifting. Take it away, and the mind begins to unravel. Slowly at first, then all at once. They replay the story, again and again. Every word, every silence, every detail gets examined. They look for meaning in moments that never had any. They invent reasons that don't exist. They write scripts you never spoke. Because the mind cannot leave a puzzle unsolved. It claws at the missing piece. It bleeds itself dry, searching for closure. Closure is medicine. It stitches the wound. It ties the knot. It lets the person finally put the memory in a box and set it aside. But without closure, the box stays open. The wound never closes. It stings each time the thought returns. And the thought always returns. Think of the abandoned lover. Not told why, not given a reason. Their life continues. Work, friends, habits. But in the quiet moments, the mind drifts back. Why did it end? What did I do wrong? Was it me? Was it them? Did I miss a sign? The questions circle, never landing. Think of the friend who was cut off with no explanation. The silence is louder than words. Every memory becomes suspect. Every laugh, every promise, every goodbye, replayed like evidence in a trial with no verdict. Think of the rival left in the dark. They don't know your plan. They don't know your reasons. They fear the unknown move more than the blow already struck. This is the mind's weakness. It is not built for uncertainty. It cannot rest in half answers. It cannot breathe in unfinished stories. Closure heals, but it also frees. It releases people from you. It cuts the tether. It gives them peace. No closure, that's the opposite. It chains them to the past, to you, to the question you never answered. And that chain never rusts. It pulls at them when they wake. It tugs at them when they sleep. They can laugh, they can pretend, they can say, "I've moved on," but deep down, they haven't. They can't, because the mind can forgive pain. It can recover from loss, but it cannot forgive not knowing. It cannot recover from a story without an ending. That is the knife. That is the weakness. And once you see it, you understand. The cruelest power is not striking the body, but leaving the mind to strike itself. Part 2. The leverage of absence. Give closure, and they walk free. It's that simple. The knot comes loose. They breathe again. They stop turning over the past. They stop searching for meaning. You set them free the moment you explain yourself. And freedom is always a gift to the other person, not to you. Deny closure, and they stay bound to you. The rope doesn't break, it only tightens. Every quiet night, every empty room, they return to the same thought. What happened? Why did it end? What did I miss? You live in their head without lifting a finger. You don't even try. You've moved on, but they haven't. Because they can't. You left them with a sentence missing its final word. And that silence is louder than any explanation you could give. The unfinished always haunts more than the finished. A story with an ending can be put back on the shelf. Even if it hurts, even if it stings, the book is closed. But the story left open? It stays on the nightstand. The reader keeps reaching for it, keeps wondering what happens on the page that isn't there. That's leverage. The kind you don't have to enforce. The kind that works on its own. Think of the fight, where everything is said. You shout. You cry. You explain. The other person leaves with certainty. They know the reason. They know the cause. And certainty, even when painful, brings peace. They sleep within a week. Now think of the fight that never happens. No yelling, no door slam, just absence, no words, no explanation, no closure. The other person doesn't sleep for months. They wonder if you're angry. They wonder if you'll return. They wonder what they should have done differently. The silence becomes a storm in their head. A puzzle left unsolved never leaves the table. That's human nature. We can't walk away from unfinished things. The mind keeps circling, keeps gnawing, keeps replaying. It burns through its own energy trying to solve a riddle that has no answer. And while they're burning, you're untouched. You've already moved on. But they remain stuck in place, orbiting your absence, like a planet around a star that's no longer there. Gravity without mass, force without effort. This is the leverage of absence. It doesn't require you to fight. It doesn't require you to speak. It doesn't require you to act at all. It only requires you to leave the page blank. The silence does the rest. Their own mind does the work. And as long as they keep circling the question, you still hold power. Part 3. Lessons from history. Shakespeare ended his plays. Every tragedy, every comedy, every history. There was always a final act. The curtain fell, the audience clapped. They went home with answers. The story was complete. And what happens to complete stories? They fade. They become memories, not questions. You might admire the writing, you might recall a scene or two. But the hunger is gone, the mystery is buried, the box is sealed. Machiavelli was different. He didn't write plays. He didn't tie bows around his lessons. He left fragments, principles, observations with sharp edges, no endings, no final curtain. That's why his words still echo. They refuse to stay in the past. They don't tell you what to do. They tell you what might happen. They leave space. And in that space, people pour their own fears, their own hopes, their own ambitions. Every generation reads him again, not because he gave answers, but because he left blanks. The prince, the court, the people, they change with time, but the uncertainty stays the same. You can never fully pin him down. That's the genius. Shakespeare gave closure, so his plays are studied, admired, then put back on the shelf. Machiavelli gave tension, so his shadow still walks the world. Every politician, every schemer, every strategist, whether they admit it or not, still wrestles with the gaps he left open, because fragments live longer than conclusions. A finished story dies, an unfinished one multiplies. and the mind never stops chasing the missing piece. Part 4. In relationships. The lover. End with a speech and the wound is clean. You tell them why. You tell them it's not working. You tell them you can't go on. They cry, they grieve, they call their friends. They write in journals. They play sad songs. And then they heal. Time takes over. The hurt becomes a scar. They move on. They sleep again. They laugh again. They love again. Now end with silence. No explanation. No message. Just gone. They can't file it away. They can't stitch the wound. So it stays open. Every night they replay it. Every conversation. Every gesture. They look for meaning in shadows. They whisper why in empty rooms. Months later, they still wonder if you'll return. Years later, they still wonder what they did wrong. You don't live in their house. You live in their mind, the enemy. Yell and curse at them. Spit out every insult. Throw every stone. They hate you, yes. But it's clean hate, pure, solid, justified. They can point at you and say, this is why. They gather others. They rally their anger. The war is clear, and clarity brings rest. But leave quietly. No words, no curses, no scene. They don't get the clean line of hate. They don't know if you despise them. They don't know if you plan revenge. They don't know if you're watching. So they watch themselves. They grow paranoid. They feel hunted even when you're not there. Every shadow looks like you. Every silence feels like your plan. Their own mind twists the knife. The colleague. You explain your disagreement. You outline your reasons. Maybe you clash. Maybe you argue. But it ends. They nod, even if they don't like it. The air clears. The tension dissolves. But say nothing. Let the silence hang in the room. Don't clarify. Don't confirm. Don't deny. Now the air doesn't clear. It thickens. It presses down on them. They stew for days. They second-guess every word they spoke. They wonder what you think. They wonder if you respect them. They wonder if you despise them. And the wondering drains them more than the conflict ever could. This is the quiet cruelty of silence. It doesn't break the body. It bends the mind. It twists the knife, but leaves no blood. Because words end things, even harsh ones. They draw a line. They set a boundary. They let both sides breathe. Silence? Silence leaves no line. It leaves a fog. Thick, heavy, endless. And people wander in it, searching for edges that aren't there. That's why silence lingers longer than anger. Anger burns out. It exhausts itself. It leaves ash. But silence doesn't burn. It freezes. It suspends. It traps. And in that trap, the other person circles forever. The lover replaying your absence. The enemy doubting your next move. The colleagues sweating over your unspoken judgment. Each of them caught. Each of them bleeding from a knife they never saw. A knife you never lifted. Only silence. Part 5. The Rule of Less. Speak less than you know. It feels unnatural. People want to explain. They want to be understood. They want to defend themselves. But every word you give away is a piece of leverage lost. The more you speak, the more they see. The more they see, the less they fear. Reveal less than you think. Keep the edges hidden. Keep the center dark. Not because you have nothing to say, but because the mystery is stronger than the truth. Leave gaps in every story. A missing piece here. A loose thread there. Let them pull at it. Let them wonder why you stopped talking just before the point was clear. The mind can't stand gaps. It claws at them. It gnaws on them. It circles the silence, trying to fill it with meaning. And it does fill it. With fear. With doubt. with obsession. The imagination is harsher than the truth. The truth might be sharp, but it ends. The imagination never ends. It spins darker futures. It invents crueler motives. It turns shadows into monsters. And while they spin, you stand still, untouched. You don't raise a hand. You don't raise your voice. Silence turns their own mind against them. They become their own interrogator, their own executioner. You don't need to prove anything. They do the work for you. That is the rule of less. The less you say, the more they imagine. The less you show, the more they project. And the pictures they create are always worse than reality. In silence, you win without moving. You dominate without force. You haunt without presence. Part 6. Ghosting as a weapon. Ghosting isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's a weapon. Done right, it's strategy. Cold, precise, effective. Most people ghost out of fear. Fear of conflict. Fear of facing the other person. That's cowardice. And cowardice has no power. But ghosting with intent? That's different. That's control. That's leverage. It works in 4 steps. First, give them a high, a rush, a moment where they feel seen, chosen, alive. It could be praise, it could be passion, it could be a secret shared at the right time. The mind records peaks more than valleys, so you give them one. Second, leave at the peak. Not when things go bad, not after the fight. Leave when everything feels strong, when they expect more, when they're leaning in. Now the story breaks, the arc bends wrong, the brain screams for completion. Third, say nothing. No goodbye. No, it's not you. No excuse, nothing. Because every word you give closes a door, and your power is in leaving doors open. So you lock your mouth and let silence do the work. Fourth, maybe return. Not with answers, not with apology, just a spark, a like, a short message, a vague sign you still exist. You don't light the fire. You leave the ashes for them to stir. This is how you become a ghost in their head. Not flesh and blood, not present, but everywhere. In their dreams, in their anger, in their questions. They hate you. They want you. They wonder about you. All of it, energy spent on you. And it doesn't matter whether it's love or hate. Obsession is the same currency. Obsession is obedience in disguise. Because while they chase your shadow, you're free. You've already moved on. They're still circling, still replaying, still burning energy in the prison of your silence. That's the art of ghosting. Not escape, not weakness, but presence through absence, power without touch, control without effort. Part 7. The social echo. People without closure don't stay silent. They can't. The mind won't let them. So they talk. They spread your name. They carry your shadow into every room they enter. They ask others, "Have you heard from him? Do you know why she left? Did they say anything to you?" Questions like smoke, filling corners, clinging to clothes. And when no one has answers, it only grows louder. The silence multiplies. Speculation feeds on speculation. The story gets retold, reshaped, exaggerated, not because you are there, but because you are unresolved. Your absence becomes a phenomenon. People orbit it the way they orbit tragedy, scandal, mystery. They don't know the truth, so they invent one. Each person builds a version of you in their head. Each version different. Each version incomplete. You don't show up, yet you control the room. Every whisper is about you. Every theory keeps you alive. They debate your motives. They assign meaning to your silence. They mistake absence for depth. This is the echo. You say nothing, and the crowd speaks for you. You disappear, and they keep you present. You withhold, and they create. The longer you stay silent, the more the echo grows, not noise, reputation, image, myth. And the best part, you never lifted a finger. Part 8. Scarcity and reputation. Scarcity makes value. Everyone knows it. Diamonds, gold, oil. Not because they shine, not because they're beautiful, because they're rare. Rare things are priceless. What you can't touch becomes what you can't stop thinking about. What you can't have becomes what you chase. The same law applies to people. Most explain, most defend, most talk until their words are cheap. They empty themselves trying to be understood. But the one who doesn't explain, the one who doesn't justify, they become scarce. And scarce means powerful, because silence is rare, restraint is rare, indifference is rare, and what is rare always rises in value. People may resent you for it. They may call you cold, arrogant, cruel. But under the resentment is respect. Respect for the control. Respect for the distance. Respect for the way you never bow to the need to be understood. Even if they hate you, they talk about you. At dinner tables, in offices, in whispers behind closed doors, your name moves without you moving it. And talking, even in anger, even in envy, is loyalty in disguise. It's energy pointed in your direction. It's proof that silence made you matter more. Because when you're scarce, you don't chase attention. Attention chases you. And the less you give, the more they want. The less they know, the more they imagine. Scarcity turns into reputation. Reputation turns into legend. And legend is a currency no one can counterfeit. Part 9. From confusion to myth. When there's no closure, people invent one. The mind hates blank space. It paints over the silence. It fills the cracks with story. They can't stand the unfinished, so they finish it themselves. They add motives. They add reasons. They add details that never happened. And slowly, you stop being a person. You become a story. A story retold in bars, in bedrooms, in quiet conversations that stretch into the night. Stories live longer than facts. Facts are dry. They settle. They gather dust. But stories breathe. They grow. They shift shape each time they're told. They survive because people want to tell them. That's what happens when you don't give closure. You leave the stage, but the play keeps running. The audience keeps writing their own ending, and each ending keeps you alive. You become a legend, not a memory. Memories fade. Legends spread. Memories belong to one person. Legends belong to everyone who repeats them. And here's the secret. You don't need to be perfect. Legends aren't born from perfection. They're born from unfinished stories. The gaps invite imagination, and imagination makes you larger than life, not because you were flawless, but because you were unfinished. The mystery becomes the myth. The questions become the worship. The ghost outlives the man. The living body is limited. It walks, it eats, it dies. But the ghost doesn't need food. It doesn't need rest. It lingers in the silence you left behind. It moves from one mind to another, past like smoke. People can forget faces. They can forget voices. But they don't forget ghosts. Ghosts don't fade. They echo. Think of the old stories still told. Not because the facts were clear, but because they weren't. The generals who vanished, the lovers who disappeared, the rulers who left no explanation. Their silence became the myth, and the myth became eternal. That's the law. The unfinished always lasts longer than the finished. A story with closure is a closed door. A story without it is a door that never stops opening. And when you leave someone without closure, you turn yourself into that door, a passage they walk through again and again, never reaching the end, never finding peace. You stop being a person they knew. You become a legend they chase. And that legend, that ghost, will always outlive the man. Closure is mercy. Mercy frees. It gives people peace. It lets them tie up the story, file it away, and move on. Don't free them. Don't explain. Don't finish the story. Because the moment you explain, you give them the key. You hand them a way out. You allow them to forget you. Leave the page blank. Leave the door half open. Leave the silence hanging heavy in the air. Let them suffer the silence. Let them replay the words that were never spoken. Let them imagine endings that never came. Because silence doesn't fade. Words fade. Anger fades. Even love fades. But silence grows. It becomes bigger with each day they don't hear from you. Silence becomes myth. It becomes a shadow larger than your presence ever was. It becomes the thing they tell others about, the thing they can't stop circling back to. And myth is power. Power that doesn't need to shout. Power that doesn't need to explain. Power that doesn't beg to be understood. This is the final law. If you want to be remembered, don't give closure. If you want to be powerful, don't give peace. If you want to live inside their heads forever, say less than you know, and leave before the story ends. A clean ending is forgettable. An unfinished one is eternal. Now ask yourself, in your own life, how often have you given away your power by explaining too much? How many times have you freed someone who should have stayed bound to you? How many times have you handed them peace when silence would have made you unforgettable? Power is not about winning arguments. It's not about being liked. It's about lingering. It's about living rent-free in their thoughts long after you've gone. So don't explain. Don't close the book. Walk away while the questions still burn. Let the silence do the work. And if this law spoke to you, share it. Let others see what you now see. Because silence, once understood, is a weapon. And the fewer who master it, the more powerful it becomes for you.